The push to remove President Trump from office continues. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says the House will move to impeach Trump if he does not resign immediately. At least one former Trump administration official says removing Trump from office might actually make things worse. I'm joined by John Bolton. He served as U.S. President Donald Trump's national security advisor and as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations from 2005 to 2006. We reached him in Washington. Ambassador Bolton joins me from Washington. Ambassador, I know you are opposed to the talk in Washington right now about removing President Trump from office before the transition. You say it could make a bad situation already worse. But I wonder, are you not worried about what President Trump might try next?
Well, what I've said is that anybody who's talking about invoking the 25th Amendment or impeachment has to be able to make the utilitarian argument that we would be in a better situation taking that approach than we are now. And I think it's a hard argument to make. But let's be clear, I'd love to see Trump out of the White House. The Wall Street Journal this morning called on him to resign. I'd like him to resign. He's not going to do that. We've now got, as of Friday, 12 days left. Every day that goes by is one day less. And you have to weigh the costs and benefits of invoking yet another major constitutional provision to make a change at the White House. And just to take the 25th Amendment, Section 4, which is the section we're talking about here, has never been used before. Never.
I guess the counter argument to that is the potential threat that he might pose in his remaining time. You were national security advisor, so what's your assessment of the national security threat posed by Donald Trump right now?
Well, I think people should remember, especially in the national security space, let's just take the Defense Department as an example. The military must follow any lawful order by the president. And I would be happy to bet any amount of money you want, Canadian or American, that the word lawful will receive incredible scrutiny over the next 12 days. The Pentagon is a building that doesn't move fast even when it's told to go in the direction it wants to go. And when it's told to go in a direction it doesn't want to go, it moves even slower. So, can Trump cause damage? Of course he can. His tweets cause damage. His Parler statements cause damage. His Facebook presentations cause damage. Am I seriously worried about wag the dog scenarios? No, I'm not. And so I think it's important not to be hyperthyroid about the dangers that can occur in 12 days. We've just gone through 4 years and 353 days, and a lot of damage has been caused. How much in the last 12 days? I don't know. I think we should encourage the president to get on Air Force One and take a tour of America's great golf courses. I think that'd be a
Well, just like you said, he's not ready to resign. It's a bit hard to imagine him taking you up on that particular vacation suggestion. You made the point about the Pentagon.
Honestly.
You made that point about the Pentagon, though, and I do want to ask you, because House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has said today that she's spoken with the Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley on precautions to prevent Trump from initiating hostilities or ordering a nuclear strike. And I just wonder whether you think that that is a prudent step right now.
No, it's not. It's a political step. Nancy Pelosi talking to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Okay, you've made your point. I tell you this. I have complete confidence in the uniformed military of the United States, including its top leadership. And I have more confidence in, under present circumstances, I have more confidence in the military leadership at the Pentagon than I do in the civilian leadership. So, you can imagine a lot of terrible scenarios, but if you live life acting constantly on the worst possible thing that can happen, you're going to have a worse life than if you tried to be realistic. And that's what I'm saying. Let's be objective in assessing what can happen in the next 12 days and then weigh it against the cost. Let's take the 25th Amendment again. Never been employed. It's not designed for this situation. It's not a license to a coup. This is about Woodrow Wilson being impaired for the last year of his presidency.
Okay, so
that's not the situation we have here. The risk is if the vice president tries to act Do you think Trump will go quietly? Of course he won't. You could have two dueling presidents for the last 12 days. Is that a better situation than we have now? Make that case. I don't think you can.
Well, I'd like to hear you make the case then, if not the next 12 days, just broadly about his culpability in all of this. What do you think needs to happen to President Trump? I mean, should he face criminal charges? How do you see his responsibility in what happened on Wednesday?
Well, I think he's completely responsible for it. It's fortunately unprecedented in American history to have a sitting president incite a mob to attack the Capitol building, to interfere with the count for the Electoral College vote. There's no question about what he did, what he intended, and what happened.
So should he face criminal charges?
If that's appropriate, the U.S. Attorney, the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, has indicated that anybody responsible for it is going to be looked at. It may be that the new Biden administration will appoint a special counsel to look at it if they think that's appropriate. So, of course, if there's a criminal case that can be made, then I think it should be made. But the issue is political stability in the United States. People may hate Donald Trump, and I understand that. But how about the security of the country and the mood of the people after having watched what happened on television? It's not going to happen again. So if you want to put the country through another impeachment or the first exercise of Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, you are obliged, if you're a serious person, to be able to weigh the costs and benefits. And right now, there's a lot of political rhetoric in Washington, nothing new there. But we're at a very perilous point, and people need to think about the implications of their actions a lot more than Donald Trump ever does.
I wonder what you think about the comparison that's been made vis-a-vis the policing of this particular incident. People have looked at the way the Black Lives Matter protest was handled, for instance, and made the point that this was a predominantly white crowd. There were many fewer arrests. I mean, Joe Biden himself suggested that this would have been more violent if things were different. What's your take?
I think that's fatuous, and I think it's very unhelpful. Who is the highest ranking official on Capitol Hill? The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi. Now, they fired the police chief of the Capitol Police. Fire the subordinate. I didn't have anything to do with that. The fact is that there was a catastrophic security failure here. Catastrophic. And we need to find out why.
But you think Black Lives Matter protesters, if they had gotten into the Capitol, there'd be selfies taken? I mean, yeah.
Would you let me finish?
Yes, sir.
A police officer of the Capitol Police died. And so did one of the protesters, killed by a gunshot. Mm-hmm. The Capitol Police were overwhelmed here. There was a massive failure of planning. Now, if you can prove that the failure of planning was due to racism, then I think that would be a terrible thing. But the fact is that there were a lot of mistakes made here by a lot of different people. And I would also point out for those who are interested that security was restored very easily. This mob was, there's nothing I'm saying that justifies what they did at all, but it wasn't that big and it didn't shoot its way in. It pulled down a fence and walked into the Capitol building. That is utterly unacceptable. But to say that it's due to racism when you have no evidence of it, it's a catastrophic failure. If it is due to racism, then steps should be taken. But you just assert it as if it's a fact, and so did Joe Biden, and you're both mistaken.
To be fair, I asked you for your opinion. What Joe Biden said is no one can tell me that if it had been a group of Black Lives Matter protesters yesterday, that they wouldn't have been treated any differently than the mob that stormed the Capitol. You think that's factually incorrect?
Yeah, look, the failure here is not simply a failure of the Capitol Police. It's a failure of the Park Police, the Department of Homeland Security, the Justice Department, possibly the Defense Department. There's a lot that we don't know. And just the fact there was no outer perimeter. I'm just stunned that basic step wasn't taken. These protesters never should have gotten anywhere near the Capitol building, let alone getting into it. They should never have been allowed to get anywhere near it. And I'm just mystified that the United States Secret Service, which had two of its top protectees in that building, the Vice President of the United States and the Vice President-elect of the United States, and they allowed this to happen, to put them at that kind of risk. There was a serious problem here. Mm-hmm. And simply to assert that somehow there was a difference in the treatment of the security of the Capitol because of the nature of the demonstrators, that's a very serious charge to make without evidence.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people would agree it's serious. We unfortunately only have a bit of time with you, sir, and I do want to ask you about Canada specifically because our Prime Minister said today that Donald Trump incited this assault on democracy. Those were his words. Do you think it matters what other world leaders say at this point, that they put the blame for this on President Trump?
Well, that's where the blame belongs. And I understand the United States has gotten a lot of negative comments, a lot of snarky remarks by authoritarian leaders. That's all very damaging to the United States. But I will say this, we failed our own standards. And it's important to correct that according to our own standards. And we will.
And what does that mean concretely?
Well, I think it means that we're going to have to take steps to make sure that in the future there's greater scrutiny, at least within the Republican Party, of the character or lack thereof of people who seek the nomination of our party to avoid this happening again, and that there's more courage within the party, more leadership when we see this kind of thing occurring. The point I'm trying to make is America judges itself by its own standards, and we failed. Mm-hmm. We will correct.
You do see members of cabinet resigning now, staffers, others, Elaine Chao, Betsy DeVos. A good move? Too little, too late?
Well, it's up to them. I mean, everybody has to make his or her own decision, and I don't second guess what they did. I think there's an argument that Condi Rice made yesterday, which is pretty compelling to me, that at least in the national security space, some people ought to stick around against events that can happen in the rest of the world. Doesn't depend on what happens in Washington. Actually, the rest of the world proceeds at its own pace. But what individual people do is a decision they have to make. I've seen a lot of people who resigned at difficult times. I've seen others who stayed on. I've been criticized for not resigning soon enough. I've been criticized for resigning at all. People told me I had an obligation.
So let me ask you about that, Ambassador. In closing, I'd just like to know if the past week colors your feeling about your time.
Can I finish my answer?
Yes, sir.
So I think this is a matter that is very hard to second guess. And I think people are trying to do what they think is right for the country. And that's the standard they should follow.
I just wanted to ask you, Ambassador, in closing, to the point that you were making, given how unprecedented the past week has been, has it caused you to question or does it color your own time as part of this administration? No, I served the country as best I could. So did many other people. And I'd like to know what else we're supposed to do. We'll leave it there. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you for your time today.
Thanks for letting me answer the questions.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.